So welcome to our human design training. And in this first installation of information, we're going to understand how the body graph works. We're going to look at the different energy types, and we're going to talk about your authorities, how your strategy impacts your design. We're going to unpack also profiles and definitions, and that's everything we're going to kind of cover, which is actually quite a lot of information, not just today, but over our next session as well. So what I will do now, I'm just going to share my screen, and I've created a slide presentation, which you'll also receive. But to start with, what I want to do is I just want to show you my chart. So I thought that was less political than have someone else's chart up with their name all hidden. And you've got your charts in front of you, so you can also have a look. And if you don't have a chart, then just simply look at mine. So if you had a reading with me, this is what the kind of format I would use. And I would give you your chart looks like this. You can pull your chart from Jovian. There's so many human design websites that you can pull a human design chart from. I always recommend using Jovian Archive. So jovianarchive.com is the original founders of human design. It's the mothership of information, and they are the best. And I'll provide a link for you for that as well, if you would like, in the chat. Now, when you're looking at a chart and you've pulled your chart off, the information that you're going to see displayed generally on a chart, even if it's a free chart online, will be your type, your strategy, your authority, your not self, your definition, and your profile. And even if you're pulling this for a client, you would need to know what these different aspects are and what they mean. And that's the whole purpose of the training. It's to break down the body graph and make this understandable. The incarnation crosses we're not going to cover in this session. Incarnation crosses are actually much more complex and have to do with karmic themes, but a lot of them do give you your incarnation cross. And incarnation crosses, you can Google them. There's also a lot of information out there, but they're too complex to cover in a training like this. So let's look at human design. Human design as the science of differentiation. So that's what they call it. Ultimately, it's the science of individuation. So they're wanting you to individuate. They're wanting you to not be reliant on making your decisions from anything other than what is resonating with you, your way of making decisions, your way of accessing yourself, and how your design affects that. So when we look at what human design is, what we're seeing is that, firstly, there's a lot of misconception around what human design is. You know, people believe that human design is a system that is really just focused on, like, you know, being some kind of weird belief system, or, you know, some strange like way of manifesting. And there's a lot of information out there, and that information is predominantly, I want to say, false to a large degree, because it's not really authentic in terms of what they're actually saying. You know, human design is a system that is not a religion. So you're not required to believe anything. It is not, it's not there to kind of indoctrinate you with any information. It's not like all hey shoo-wow either. It's actually a tool that allows you to do a lot of inner work on yourself. It's a tool that allows you to get out of your head and stop relying on your thoughts the whole time and being convinced that your mind is the only place that you can make a decision. You know, a lot of us struggle to trust our intuition. How do you find your intuition? This is a portal to finding your intuition. And trusting your intuition, trusting how you feel about something and what your intuition is actually telling you, so that you are able to flow and work with life in a much more fluid way. Where at the moment, a lot of us are kind of stuck in, like, you know, what is conditioning from society? What's the norm? How should we be living? And that's why human design is this tool that says, you know, like, hey, let's free ourselves from all of that. let's let go of all that conditioning. Let's bring these sciences, these different older modalities together. Let's combine them, because what we're doing currently is that we're in a system where we're looking at these modalities in isolation. And I'll talk a little bit now, just now, about the origination of human design. But when we're taking, for instance, astrology in isolation, or we're taking I Ching in isolation, or we're looking at quantum physics, or we're looking at gene keys in isolation, you know, those are all sort of single aspects. One looks at the chakras, energy. Here is a system that's bringing it together. It's bringing it together into one place. And it's quite tricky, because it's a fairly new science, and new science being from like the 80s, around the 80s. And it was founded by a Canadian businessman, and his name was Robert, and he was from Montreal, Canada, and he was in Ibiza at the time. And, you know, he was, I would say, you know, when you read stories about him and you watch anything where he's talking, you can see he's quite a grounded individual. He's not, you can see he's not a bullshitter, and he didn't really come here to be the guru and to, you know, be like, oh, you know, I'm the guru, worship me. He's like, I had this experience, you know, and I thought I was going crazy. And now I was told I had to do all this stuff. I kind of got this download over this period of how to bring a new science into humanity that would help them, how to combine the older sciences together. I gave up my work, my money. I lived like listening to spirits. I was told I can't trust my mind. My mind is not there to help me. I have to, you know, I have to work on this experiment. And in that process, what does that leave you? It leaves you being this kind of crazy person, and, you know, just trying to make it work because you were told and you were guided. And, you know, his experience that he had, where he speaks about this voice that came to him. What's quite incredible about it, when you do some research, is that there were other people on the island in Ibiza at the time who had the same mystical experience that Ra did. He wasn't in isolation. And those people all had a very similar experience, where this voice, this beingness came to them and said, you know, like there's something we want to bring through. Are you able to bring it through? And people were like, whoa, I can't do it. And Ra just said, okay, sure. What is it? You know, tell me. And he obviously got this download and he worked on it. And he always said, you know, like, listen, this is an experiment. Like you guys have to try this for yourself. This is what I've told, and I need some feedback. And so I'm going to explain to you how it works. And then you're going to go and you're going to experiment, and then you're going to come back and we're going to talk about it. And that's how the whole foundation and you could say his teachings was kind of built on. It was built on this, like, I'm not the guru, like, just try this for yourself. If it resonates with you and if it's working with you, then it's perfect. And obviously he passed away in 2011, but he left a legacy of his work. And that's why I say, like, you know, always refer back to the mothership, to Jovian. If you want to do courses, if you're looking at really taking human design to the next step, I always go to the source and you know, access the source, research the source, and then from the source radiate outwards. And so that's always a good place to start. Now, if we're looking at the body graph and you have got your body graph in front of you, or you're looking at my screen, what you're seeing here is a 9-centered energy system. So yes, you can say there's aspects of the chakras that relate, but it's a 9-centered system. And that's because we're looking at a system of astrology, we're looking at a system of I Ching, Kabbalah, Hindu chakras, quantum physics, and they're combining it into a system. And in that system, we have our 64 gates, and that relates back to the I Ching, is the 64. And we have 36 channels, because each of those gates, and you can see here, for instance, if I'm looking at the head here, I have a 63 to 4. And in that space where they connect, they create what we call a channel of energy. And those channels are part of our, what we call our circuitry in human design. But before we even start talking about that, one needs to be able to look at a body graph and make sense of what you're actually looking at. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our body graph, and we're actually going to look at your body graph. So if we start off with the body graph, think of it as a binary circuitry system. Don't put a personality on it. Don't put a person over it. Put it as an energy. So if you were to just imagine a person transparent, you were looking at the energy system. If you work with any healing modality, just imagine that person as being a circuit. And so in that circuitry, we start at the top. We have the head, we have the ajna, we have the throat, and the throat leads down to the G center, and the G center moves over to the heart. And the heart is actually positioned where your heart is in real life, and your sacral, and it goes down to your root. And then on the left-hand side, you have your spleen, and on the right-hand side, you have your solar plexus. So I'll be explaining what each of these centers are and how they function, but it's important to first name them so you can see them, they're named, and they have got some sort of a property attached to them. Now, on the left-hand side of your chart, you'll see what we call the design, and on the right-hand side, we see the personality. Now, the design side of the chart is linked to the unconscious. So that is the planetary activations 3 months before you were born. And in this particular example, you're seeing on screen, the color reference for that is orange. I do know that when you look at Jovian, your color reference will probably be red. They do use a different color. Then on the right-hand side, we have conscious, and that is your personality, that is your mind. And these are the planetary activations from the moment you were born. So you actually have 2 charts, basically, from 3 months prior and then to the moment you're born, and they're overlaid. If you get sort of super technical, you can isolate the charts and you can say, like, in this aspect of my design, and I refer to myself here, when I separate my charts and I look in the matrix software I've got, and I'll also refer, if you want any software referrals, I'll provide that too. I see that in my design side, when you strip away aspects of 3 months before, I'm a reflector. But then on my personality side, I'm a projector, but then you move them together and they become a projector. But that becomes a little bit more sort of unnecessary complication when you're first entering it. But you do hear people talking about that, where they talk about the design and they talk about the personality. Now, the design side of your chart and the gates that are associated, because all these numbers here that move down from the sun all the way down to the bottom, all these are your astrology gates, are your astrology activations in the chart, and they're linking to gates. So like 15 in the sun, 15 will be active in this chart, and I will go and I'll look, oh, there's 15 in the G center. It's active. That's on the design side. Now, I would look over to the personality and I'd say, oh, is there a 15 over here? Because you can have a 15 on both sides in different, aspects because of activations of the positions of the planets. Now, the design side of us, when we're looking at those gates and those activations, those are the more aspects of us which we, in a reading, we would struggle to connect with. That in a reading, they would come up and we would be like, but am I really like that? I don't know if I resonate with that 100%. And that's because they're unconscious, but not unconscious in like, oh, you're unconscious. If we say, what is known to you, what is lit up, right? That's conscious. What is unconscious is the unknown, that which you haven't yet lit up, but that which you're going to be made conscious of, part of your purpose, part of your flow. So it's there for you to become aware of and almost like access and integrate. And so those are how the two kind of play. I had a question once where someone contacted me and they said, they resonated more with their design side and the gates in their design side than they did in the personality. And why was that? And when I questioned them a little bit more, what I found was that they were living really in flow with their design. So they were actually living more in tune with spirit and who they were and what their purpose was than the personality, which can often be the mind and how the machinations of the mind are working. So that's just an interesting point to look at. And also remember that when you're looking at information, you see you've got a gate and look which side it's on, and tap into that and see, you know, is it something that you resonate with or you don't resonate with? And then you would know why, and you could question that a little bit more. Now, both the design and the personality side here have your astrological planets, and they are pretty much the same. They don't change from left to right, and they won't change on my chart to yours. But what will change is the gates. So the sun will always be there, the earth will be there, you'll have the north node, the south node, and the moon. I did notice that there are different software changes the order of the moon and the south node and the earth. These kind of shift, these few kind of shift around. So if suddenly you pull the chart and then you see it's in a different order, it's happened to me before. I'm being like, oh my word, is my software incorrect? It's not, it's just the order that they place it in. And then you have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so that's basically your planets down the side. It's nice to make a little note of those planets to also see, okay, well, where is my sun? Oh, my sun is in my G center. And as you start to learn a little bit more with me, it'll start making sense and it will start to open up a bit. Now, with these arrows next to the head, these are what we call variables, and they are a conversation that we have in terms of how our digestion works, how our environment affects us, how our thinking works, how our perspective is, what motivates us. And that's all about what happens inside, this inside-outside workings. I offer readings on the variables, but I always say it's important to understand your chart at its base level before you go into variables. But variables are very interesting because they will show you how you think and the environment that best suits you in order to access your best aspect of thinking. So I had a client yesterday who, her variables, it was really interesting. They were all talking about the fact that if she eats right, if she sits in the right place in her work environment, you know, even just the position of your desk, her ajna is affected, her third eye. And then when she starts to access her third eye, her thinking then is more in tune with her third eye, then works into her sacral, which was her authority. So her decision making is clearer. So I found that was a very interesting combination of a conversation that the variables have. Any center that is open, like you see the head here, we call this open, the ajna is open. Okay, it doesn't matter if there's gate activations or not. That's referred to as an open, undefined center. And when a center is a solid color, as we see here and in the sacral and the G center, that's called defined. So when a center is open, those are the places that are open to conditioning. That's what makes us different. And the places where we're solid are where we're solid. That's where we define. In those spaces, we are conditioning. There's a transmission happening of energy, and the places that are open are the places that are receiving. So when I look at a chart like this, if I'm just doing a very basic glance on the chart, I would say, okay, here's an individual who is very open-minded. They're very dynamic in their thinking because their ajna is open, so they can see many sides of a topic. They can turn ideas around. Because their head is open, they're also open to influence. They get stuck kind of thinking about other people's problems a little bit too much. They need to kind of get out of that. They also would suit like a more relaxed style of learning. So, you know, putting a child with these configurations into a very rigid environment, a very rigid learning environment might not work for the child that well. They would want a little bit more flexibility. They want to be allowed to freely think. They need to get out. They need to see. You know, you've got to go out and be activated. So don't just sit at home. You're going to go crazy. Go out and do the things that really inspire you. But the one thing that's really going to be the struggle for this individual is the open heart, because the heart is totally open, and the heart is where our willpower lies, and it's where our self-esteem lies. And when that is open, we have here a lack of self-esteem, not charging enough for your services, not believing in yourself enough, having that like struggle of self that comes here, being super open-hearted as well. So very generous. So you got to be careful of being too generous, and your boundaries around that as well, which are important. You know, here, this is a chart of a manifesting generator that we're looking at, and the rest of the chart is very defined, but that doesn't mean that the individual is not going to really struggle with these 3 open centers. And that doesn't mean that you also have to kind of like, I want to decondition to get rid of all these things I'm holding on to, and I need to clear this, and I don't want to be influenced. This is what makes you different. This is what makes you dynamic. This is what makes you amazing at who you are and what you do and how you lead and how you think. So, you know, these are actually your strengths and your weaknesses. In the places where you're defined, those become the harder places to be more flexible in. You know, there's less flexibility in who you are, you know, your G center, your direction. Like it's tough because you are who you are, you know, and also there's an emotional wave here. So, you know, this individual with the solar plexus, they have got a channel coming down here, and that channel is what we call an emotional wave. So any gates that are active here that form a connection to the root, the sacral, the heart, the throat, we call that an emotional wave. And that also it's got its own properties, which we'll get into. But you can see all I'm doing here is I'm just keynoting. I'm just talking a bit about the chart, just to open it up for you a little bit, to let you see kind of how I'm seeing it and how I want you to see it, because it's not difficult to actually see it like that. It's actually very easy. Now, I'm going to just look here at the centers, and we're going to talk a bit about the centers, because the centers are important. Like keynoting what I've just done now is so essential when you glance at a chart. You want to just be able to just glance over and see, okay, these are the places here. Okay, these are going to be the struggles there. Okay, got it. So the head is always about inspiration. So an open head, you got to get out and you got to look, you got to see, you know. If you have an open head and you're sitting at home and you're hoping to be inspired, it's not going to work. You've got to go out and look. You've got to go and see the things that inspire you. If you've got a woodwork project, if you've got an art project, if you are just so interested in pottery, or you're creating essences or anything, you've got to go out and look with the open head. You've got to see it. The ajna, conceptualization, that is open to the many sides of the facets of the diamond. I always say, you know, take an open head in ajna, give them your problems to solve, because they can see it dynamically. I've got a defined head in ajna. So the defined head in ajna, they're also a rarer entity unto themselves, because they're kind of here, they bring in ideas. They don't need to go anywhere to see. They just close their eyes and ideas come to them, and they're like, boom, idea, like, yes. And then they start actioning that idea, right? So a client can come to me and say, Lauren, I need a logo. And because I'm a graphic designer, I'm like, okay, great. And I think about the logo, think about it, design an option. Okay, there, I've got the idea. But now they want variations. That's the worst thing you can ask me for. I don't do variations because I can't think in that way. I wish I'd known this a few years ago, because then I would have actually structured the way I work differently. I would have made sure that I give it to someone with the open space so they can see the iterations. Now I know better these days. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm in a corner and I can't solve it, I shouldn't be hard-headed. What I need to do is give it to someone who's open to solve it, and then I can take it forward. So we need to work dynamically. So when the open head in ajna, or the open head or in that space, comes to the individual who's defined, the job is that we activate each other. So it's like, Lauren, I'm stuck. I can't think of something. I'm like, here's an idea. You're like, amazing. You take that idea, you create options from it. So we are meant to work together in our own individual way. The throat. All roads in human design lead to the throat. The throat is the most important place, communication, manifestation. It's where everything takes place and expresses. It is an instrument of energy. It is like the most important place to have it tuned correctly, because if your instrument is resonating at a frequency that is not meeting the ears of others, your manifestation, your communication is lost. And so a very simple play for you on this is, I see someone just wants to be entered quick. A very simple play for this is that when you're defined, and that's solid as this colors here. Remember, gates don't apply here. Is it white? Is it colored? Is to speak subjectively. This is how I feel. This is my experience. This is I, right? And when it's open, play with speaking objectively, collectively. You don't have to always do it because someone said, like, I don't know how to always do it. It's not at all. So if you do have an open throat and you feel that people just don't hear you and you're talking and the kids aren't listening or your partner's not getting what you're saying, change it. Change it to say, there's clearly an issue here. I think we should chat. Be collective. Can we sit down together and talk about this? Because the moment, and it's crazy because I have clients who try this and they say, you know, they've got the open throat, nobody hears them. I'm just saying, start your sentence with we, start it collectively, because then suddenly the person's like, what? And a friend of mine said her husband started doing that after he had a reading a while ago. And she said, and then when he says we, she said, suddenly it's like, she said, he never used to say that. So then suddenly he's like, I think we need to talk. And she's like, what have I done? Like, you know, like something's wrong. Where before it was sort of falling on deaf ears. So that's just a bit of a play. I noticed that we tend to do the opposite. So I only realized this like a few years ago because my throat's defined and I was always trying to be objective. And the moment I'm subjective, well, this is how I feel, this is how I experience it, my voice is more easily heard. And you can see as I'm talking, my voice is struggling, right? Because these are hard places that we're still working on to find our voice. So totally in line with what I'm saying. The G center. The G center, that's where your soul sits. You can call it Atma, you can call it Christ consciousness, you can call it that which comes back lifetime after lifetime. It's there, it's driving you. And it's taking you in, it's taking you where you need to be, basically. Ra would call it the magnetic monopole. And he spoke about that and how it was so important that G center was that direction that you're moving in. And when your direction is defined and you've got lots of gate activations, there is like, I want to say there's this more of a presence. There's this individual who is just like doing things, they're going places, they feel, I want to say like there's this fullness about them, but there's also this like very they very much are who they are, like, and it's hard to explain energy. But I've got a completely open G center, and the completely open G center, the struggle with that identity, love, it's like, where am I? Who am I? Who am I going? Like, what do I identify with? Am I, aren't I? Am I loved? Am I not loved? Am I accepted? Am I not accepted? A person with a defined G center is like, I know I love myself. I know who I am. The open G center is like, I'm seeking an identity. I'm looking to somewhere that I can fit in. And my advice to the open G center is just have a plan. You can change the plan, because that's the whole point, but don't not have a plan. An open G center with no plan is a very dangerous vehicle that person's driving. It's like driving with your eyes closed. You have to have a plan. If you don't know what to do for work, just get a job. It doesn't matter what you do, you'll figure it out. But to do nothing is a very dangerous place for the open G center. So if you see that in a chart, if it's child's chart, a partner, a client, and that person's like, I don't know what to do, it's just like, just do anything, just do something. That's really important. And then we get to the heart and we get to willpower, ego, and the heart is open. It doesn't mean the person isn't egotistical, that there's no ego. It just means that Person is open-hearted. They're giving a lot of themselves. They don't have this desire to, be the big boss. The defined hearts, they're rarer, right? So they come into the room, and let's say like 1 in 4, 1 in 5, like we'll walk in, they'll be defined, everyone will be open, and suddenly everyone feels competitive. And the defined heart's like, I don't really care. I was like, well, I don't really want to compete. Who cares if I win or lose? And everyone's also like, yes, let's win. Let's win. The race is on. And the defined space is like, I don't care if I win or not. And that's how we activate each other. But with the open hearts, I see this so much, right? I see defined G centers with very good leadership aspects in their chart that actually come through very clearly, very good leadership. But because the heart is open and there's an open head or open ajna, open head and ajna combo, the individual doesn't feel that they are suited to that position, because examples of leadership are always very tyrannical examples of leadership, not very open-hearted, wanting to hear the concerns of others, caring about them, wanting to give and help and care about the tribe. And so they're like, oh, I don't want to be a leader, because a leader means like that's what I aspire to. And that's the whole point, is that the idea of leadership, the idea of how things look in this paradigm that we're in is shifting, and it's all shifting. And 2027 is coming, and the heavens are shifting, and the stars are shifting, and new planetary alignments are there. The old planetary alignments are falling away. And Ra said, this is our generation, is to understand human design, integrate it. He said, because this is the future generation. This is the go-to for the future generation. So at some point, it's going to get there, and people are starting to feel that this is what's giving them more power, more understanding, more sense of self. 2027 is about the individual. It's about less of the structures, and it's about being more of an individual, trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, moving away from the mind. It's a very big theme. So you'll see it coming up quite a lot. And that's where this open heart. So if you have an open heart and you feel that you lack your self-esteem, are you good enough? Yes, you are. Like, don't let the open head and ajna convince you otherwise. And even if you're defined, don't let that be, because this is the weak point. This heart, this willpower, is where you struggle to say, I'm struggling to give up smoking. I know I want to stop, but I can't. Or I really should stop eating all that chocolates, and I want to drink less coffee, but I can't. It's that space that struggles. Kids who have open heads, ajnas, open G centers, open hearts, keep an eye on them, because a combination of having these open spaces where the willpower isn't strong, I don't know who I am, I struggle with my identity, my head is open, influence. So if they get in trouble and they're caught with drugs, or they're getting up to nonsense, look at the chart and actually see, like, is this an individual who is actually being influenced or is influencing? Because a kid who's very open is easily influenced. So you're being too heavy-handed versus like reviewing about, like, who are they associating with? Where's their sense of identity? What's that coming from? Where's the pressures in their chart? The solar plexus, emotion. This is a big one, because this is your ocean of emotion. And when it's defined, you have an emotional wave. So you will have a channel, and that channel will be going somewhere to one of the centers, and it will tell you a little bit more about that emotional wave. And then that becomes your authority, means that that's the place you make a decision from. So it's like, how do you feel about it? Anyone who has a defined solar plexus, you're not built for spontaneity. Do not be spontaneous. Do not make big life decisions spontaneously. Don't commit to things as you're opening your mouth. Spontaneously say, can I get back to you? Sleep on it, feel it, because that's really important. You're built to feel in the rhythm, and not to just react in the moment, because that reaction is coming from a place of emotion. And then that tied in with the mind is a very dangerous space. So, you know, that your emotional wave is your greatest asset. It's your biggest gift. Your spleen is your place where it's your intuition, your immune, your survival system. The spleen is open spleen, completely intuitive. Like, doesn't mean that we're not. We all have other centers for intuition. But the open spleen that's not defined, very clairvoyant, especially with no gates, very clairvoyant, but very open to the fears, the energy fears of people within the environment. So they're actually fearless, and they are so sensitive to the fears of those around them, the collective. And so it's important with that to really look at those fears and see if those fears are actually standing in your way from doing something. And are those fears like fears that you're holding on to that were conditioned, that were brought through from like your parents or partners? Or is this like actually a fear that you hold? And if you've got an open head and you've got an open spleen, and then you start to look at this and you're like, hang on a second, like I should actually be fearless and I should be open to anything. So what's actually standing in my way? Is it my open heart? I've got an emotional, I don't have an emotional wave. So I've got an open solar plexus, but a defined spleen. So I'm not really affected by other people's fears. I'm like, well, you know, your fear is your fear. Like I've got, you know, and I'm not too concerned about it. I'm not like affected. If I'm in an airplane and people start to like, someone starts to have a like stress and stuff, I don't think the airplane's going to crash. I don't feel scared because it's not my fear. Someone is feeling emotional within my environment, or there's a energy around emotion. I'm open and I can sense that emotion. Like, are you cross with me? Is there something wrong? Like I'm feeling that. So the fear is a similar thing. And then we have the sacral life force energy. The sacral defined, there's your generators, your manifesting generators. This is your life force energy. Everything is happening in the sacral. That's your power, your hub, your gut response. And then the root is about adrenaline and stress. So you have an open root, just you don't handle like a lot of pressure and stress. It's not like a very pleasant thing for you to be in an environment where it's deadline driven. It's like it's quite a lot for you to deal with, and your stress levels can peak very quickly. And it's good to know that when someone has a defined space here, you have someone who can handle a lot of stress. So I've got a defined root. And when I say, guys, like, you know, things are going to shit now, I'm stressed. Like, I'm like way stressed, like way past my center. So I actually also need to learn to communicate when my stress level is like not at that point where then people are like, oh yeah, it's not probably not that bad. It's like, no, it's pretty bad, you know? So it's that understanding thyself. But what goes deeper here is that when we see the centers, we also need to identify them as what are their functions as well. So, you know, if we look at the list I provided you on the left-hand side, because it's hard to remember these things all the time offhand, is that one, there is only one identity center, and that's your G center. And that's where your sense of self. That's why I say identity, love. Who am I? Where am I? What am I going? You know, where my direction. So that's identity. One manifestation center, the throat. Two pressure centers, the head and the root. So you can imagine that it's like taking that valve and like holding that there. So open head, open root. Ooh, there's a nice conversation between the two. I'm not sure. I feel pressure. I'm not sure. I feel pressure. I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't make up my mind. I feel so stressed. Those are just expressions of the energy. It's like understanding that, like defined root, defined head. That's me, you know. Like make up my mind. I'm here, there. I can work hard. I'm sitting here, like putting the hours in. It's like, you know, those are just sort of aspects that we experience. 3 awareness centers. Awareness centers. These are linked to spirit. Third eye, spleen, solar plexus, body, mind, and soul aspects. And then the motor centers, which if you imagine a motor center as being a light bulb that's kind of turned on and it's busy and it's working, what is the motor doing? It's just like it's busy working. It's an energy center. You can say root is the energy center, the heart, solar plexus, and the sacral. So we see that some of them double up as well as also appearing in pressure as well as motor. So they have double properties attached to them. Now, if I move over and we look at a quote from Ra, Ra said, you know, the wisdom lies in the unattached experience of our openness, which is something to consider, because where's your openness in your chart? Where's the detachment in those spaces? Or maybe you are very defined in your chart. And it's also another aspect to consider. But those are topics, there are so much to talk about on human design. And now we're going to go into the aspect of living your design. And we're going to look at the 4 types. Now, in honor of Ra's teachings, I have to list only the 4 types with the subtype of a manifesting generator, because that's the truth of it. You see, we'll talk about manifesting generator in a moment, but these are your 4 types. And you can see the statistics below there as to the data that Jovian have gathered. So all human design data, whether you put your chart in this software or that matrix, it all migrates back to a mother hub, and they keep the data there. And I've given you a link in this PDF where you can go and look at those stats. So these stats are relevant as of today. And obviously they change as people enter data, but they pretty much on average remain within their categories of percentages. So your manifestor, you could say, let's just round off 10%, generator 36, projector 23, and reflector 1.5%. So a very small amount. And these also, as you can see here, are actual examples of what each of these body graphs would look like. So now that you have had a little bit of a look at the centers, and we've discussed that, you could actually look at these. Let's just look at them in isolation. So you can see here, what do you notice about the manifestor? The manifestor has an open sacral. Notice the generator is defined, and the projector's open, and the reflector's open. And that is your patterning, basically. That's your patterning. That's your main identification. So even if you couldn't see anything else on someone's chart, and this was the only thing you could see, you would obviously need to know more to be able to identify whether you're looking at a manifestor or a projector. That would be a tricky one, because reflectors are always open, right? So a reflector chart has no definition. They're open completely. They have gate activations, but they're an entity unto themselves. So we'll talk about them separately. And very rare that you find a reflector. I find often we always think we're going to find a reflector. We're like, sure, that person's a reflector. And then they end up being either a manifestor or a very open generator. So they're quite rare to find reflectors. The manifestor, you can see, is kind of similar to a projector, because both the sacral is open here. And you can see on this projector chart, it looks very similar. So there's the base is defined. You know, this manifestor has an emotional wave. This generator doesn't have an emotional wave. Now, if we start to break this down a bit more, and we say, what is and how do we work together as a collective? Well, manifestors, their job are to get things started. They're the architects of society. They're the visionaries in a sense, and they get things going. And then the projectors, they're there to guide the process. So they're really good at system analysis and organizing, and that type of a job where it involves like the structure of stuff. And then generators, they provide the energy. They realize what needs to happen. They're able to complete it. And the manifesting generators, they always have they're multitaskers. So they're doing lots of different things at the same time. A lot of generators be like, I don't want to do that. Manifesting generators are like, great, give me 10 tasks. this is perfect for me. And they can use their generator energy to do that. And then the reflectors, that small population, they come in open and they sense everything. And they're going, you're doing that well, you're not doing that well. This is how we need to fix it. Because they're so open, and if they're open and not conditioned, if they can remain open and completely in alignment, they are the most incredible guides that we can have as a reflection of the job we're doing. So that's just a little bit of a circle of how we work together. Manifestors. So a manifestor energy, it's important to I start with manifestor, and then I'll work in that order that we saw it in the types. So with a manifestor, their aura, if you were to look at their auric field, we're just going to use words that they have a closed field, and their aura is got this sort of repelling vibration. So it's like, it looks like a bit like these waves coming out of it. And that's because they have a very sampling way of working as well. They're selective in who they feel that they can connect with and want to connect with. Keynotes on a manifestor is that they don't have a sacral definition. And there's also there's direct or indirect connection between the throat and one or more of the motor centers, which is the heart, the solar plexus, and the root. So that's what makes them a manifestor. And you can see here, solar plexus to throat connection. Now, for the manifestor, their strategy is to inform. And when you have an informing strategy, the informing strategy is very much that the energy they hold is an energy of doing. They very much have a very strong doing energy, being energy. And so in that doing and that being, their ability to correctly inform becomes both their struggle and their liberation, but also to not just inform others around them, but themselves, to be clear. We always have to start with the strategy of the self, is that, are they clear with, am I clear with myself? Am I clear with what I'm saying to myself, what I need to do and how I need to do it? And not just do it without asking, without including, without, bringing others into it, because, they make it happen. They're the fire starters. They initiate people around them. They get things moving. It's about following their urge. They come in and they rally energy. They gather, they create momentum. So, there's that, they're the planners, they're the builders, they're the suppliers. It's like, they're there to kind of come in and say, like, guys, this is what we need. We need to do this. We need to sort this. We need supplies. We need to build. We need to, this is our idea. How are we going to get this amazing thing off the ground? And they come with their ideas. You always know that a manifestor's come to you with something, because they'll come and they'll say to you, I have this amazing idea. Like, I want to start this thing, and we need at least like X amount of million or so many hundreds of thousands. And if we do this, and it's like this whole vision, and you're just like, wow, like that's a radical vision. Very manifestor energy in that. They see it, they know what's needed to make it happen. Doesn't mean per se that they will have careers as architects, but you find, funny enough, that like really some of the really, really good manifestors out there, they've got some kind of architecture behind them. It's about like that creating. They're very visionary in that. And then it's important for them to inform, correctly inform. So, when we say like, what is that? That's communication for them. Communication's big here. So an angry manifestor, They haven't been talking about things properly. They haven't been informing correctly. They haven't been, like, the communication is not good. So what is the issue with the communication? What's happening in the throat? Are they speaking clearly? Are they telling people what it is they need? Because that's a good place to start. You know, that because they have a very selective aura, and you could say they sample the aura of those around them, there's this like feeling of like approval or rejection, and they're aware of that. So they very much are, don't want to upset. I've got a very good manifestor friend, and she's like in her 50s now, and she says she's only feeling like now she can actually stand up and be like, that doesn't suit me, that's not working for me, and that's tough. Like, I'm not going to stand for that, because I just want people not to feel uncomfortable. I want people to accept me. I don't want like to. So there's this aspect of people pleasing and this worry of like, you know, like, will I be accepted? And is it okay for me to have such strong boundaries, to be clear, to kind of tell people about my ideas, to engage with it? And very selective people, they'll be like, ooh, that person's energy, like, I don't like their energy. They've got a bad energy about them. And what they're doing is that they're feeling it. They're feeling into it. And when they're in the flow of like feeling heard, and for them to feel heard is to be like, do you understand me? Am I informing you correctly about what I need? And then are you listening to me? Because when they feel heard, they're not in that not self, right? That not self happens when nobody's listening and they don't feel that they have that. And so they become angry, and it's like they want to, there's annoyance, there's irritation, you know, and it's like they just want to be able to feel comfortable. They want to be feeling independent, and they don't want people to control them. Oh, manifestors hate to be controlled. Don't control a manifestor. If a manifestor feels like you're trying to control them, they just go crazy about that. They don't want to be controlled. They want to be free agents. They're an energy type. So, you know, yes, you could say the types are energy, but they, although they have the open sacral, don't be fooled, they are still generating and initiating energy, because they are accessing motor centers in their centers. So, you know, the sacral is not the only place that generates energy. We know a lot of life force energy comes from that, but there are other aspects that generate energy in the chart too. And just because their sacral's open doesn't mean there aren't actually energy types and initiating. And you can see the stats of manifestors are also also much more lower. They're the lowest next to reflectors, and then projectors come after that. So, you know, your interaction with manifestors or coming across manifestors is also quite rare. I think in all the readings I've done, in all the hundreds now, I checked, and I only had 3 manifestors out of like 160 odd people. So it's quite radical. But then projectors tend to, because I'm a projector, they tend to attract a lot of generators. And manifesting generators, it's just the energy of the projector, and then other projectors. So it's just how it is in that. And I know other generators who are readers say they have a lot of manifestors, and that's because that energy, you know, you attract the energy that works for you. So I'm just going to stop my screen share, and then I'm going to allow anyone to ask questions, and we'll just take these 5 minutes to ask some questions if you would like to. I'll allow you to unmute. I'm just going to say that you can unmute yourself. And yeah, feel free to ask questions. Then we'll take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll carry on with that. And you can go back to anything if you want to ask, anything we've covered. And if you also don't have questions, that's fine. There's no pressure. You can think about it during your break, and you can also come back with a question, or if you want to type it in the break and have a look. So
It was just it's Shamuna here.
Hi.
Just to go back to one of the slides because I didn't write it in time. It was so one identity center, the G center, one manifesting center, throat center, two pressure centers, head and root, three awareness centers, ajna, spleen, solar plexus, and then what was the last one?
Sure. It's the motor centers. So the ones that are actually generating the energy in the chart, which is the root, the heart, the solar plexus, and the sacral.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, as you were speaking, I was looking at my design. I'm like, oh, I'm really easily influenced.
I know, right? So that's
Yeah.
like when you see that, it's actually quite a thing to realize. I always say that open head and ajna, man, like you guys can get talked into anything. It's dangerous grounds. Like, if you've got a defined G center, it will at least keep you in your direction. If you've got the open G center, you're in a lot of trouble. You got a rubber arm.
That's me. That is me.
I even know with my defined head and ajna with the open G center, the open G center is a bugger because you can totally just like float into anything and just be like, how did I get here? This was dangerous. I shouldn't have done that. Like, how did I land up with like half my body tattooed? Like, it's like, oh, well, everyone else is doing it, so it's a great idea.
Yeah, so I'm going to be mindful of that. So yes, your tips were helpful.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Anyone else like to add or share or ask? Is no, as I said, never pressure. Okay, cool. Well, what we'll do then is we'll just take our 5-minute break and we'll pause the recording. And then if you think of anything in the meantime, you can pop it in the chat or you can send me a message and we'll take it from there. Cool. Okay. See you guys now. Right, so let's get going, carrying on with the rest of our presentation. So let me do a screen share. Yeah, one of the key takeaways here for me on the manifestors, as we were discussing, is really if you have a manifestor child, and I say child because we understand how to integrate this knowledge as an adult, but like how can we help the kids? Is that you got to get them to talk. It's so important for manifestors to talk. They just want to talk about stuff. They want to learn how to express themselves, how to have healthy communication. I mean, we all need that, but for them, it's so important. And my key takeaway here is that for manifestor, informing paves the way. It's the only solution for them to have the life that they want, to be totally in flow, informing. So, one thing I forgot to mention here is that their signature is peace. So they say they will feel when they're in flow, when they're informing, they're heard, they're not feeling controlled, they have the right energy around them, they feel the sense of peace. And it's so incredible, human design. I find that when you're just talking to people and they are just really just being themselves and they're free to express themselves, it's so beautiful because people actually use these words. They use them and you can start to pick up aspects like a manifestor who's really happy and feeling so happy. They'll always tell you, I feel such peace. I feel such peace. And they don't even realize that they're saying that, and it's their signature and they're actually in their truth. So a generator. Generators have a very open and enveloping aura. Defined sacral. So sacral defined. And the sacral, it's like that, it's both cradles and generates the patterns of life on the planet. They are so generator energy. Never feel that because you have a higher stat than the other energy types that, there's no such thing. Ra said there's no such thing as one type being more special than the other. He said we're also unique. And I can guarantee you that I never assume anything. When I look at a chart, I look at a chart as like, this is the first time I'm seeing it. I don't attach anything to the fact you're a generator or a projector. I look at your chart. I have never seen the same chart. So while we have got aspects where we're looking at this in general, you are all so ridiculously unique that it's awesome, and it has to be celebrated, because that to think we're the same, it's actually not true. The fact we can even get along, that's the scary part. Like when you start seeing this, you're just like, whoa, like the fact we can even understand each other, how different we are, which is so awesome, because it allows us, a friend said to me yesterday, she said what she loves about human design is that she went away with another friend of hers, and I had done readings for both of them a while back. And she said, they were on holiday and they were actually at loggerheads a few times, and it could have got very, very, very messy. And they had been chatting human design, the charts and stuff. And she said, her friend said to her, this is how I operate. This is how I need to this is how I'm feeling, from this point of view. And she said, well, this is how I'm feeling. And she said, it was the weirdest thing. She said, human design suddenly created this bridge between them, and they could see each other for their differences and totally accept it. And she said it was the weirdest thing. They've never had that before. And she was like, whoa. And then they messaged me, can you believe it? We could see and accept each other's differences to such a degree. And that's the whole point. When we understand that, as when I look here as this generator, I see an individual who's different to me, and I accept that they're different. I accept that they have an emotional wave. Here's their emotional wave. I don't have an emotional wave. They have got more energy than I do. As a projector, I struggle with my energy. I'm not an energy type. I don't fall into an energy group, actually. We'll show you that in a moment. But generators, you open, enveloping aura. You guys need to just stop saying yes. You guys always say yes, because do you know what? You're so good at saying yes, and you're so good at doing stuff. You're so good because you can get stuff done. That's your superpower. Your superpower is that you can do it, which then starts to make it tough for you, because you get this head, and I'm going to say heart, but it's not right. So I'm going to say sacral. You get this head sacral. So your gut or your feeling, if you've got an emotional wave, is saying to you, hey, I shouldn't really be doing this, right? And then your head goes, oh, but I can't let my mom down. So it's like a millionth time she's asked me, and I know I can do it, and it's not such a big deal, and I just need to do it, and and then what happens? This not self steps in, and the not self gets up in the morning and goes, I'm so tired. I don't have energy. I don't have energy for my kids. I don't have energy for my husband. I don't want to do this job. I'm not happy. I'm feeling energetically blocked. I'm not feeling creative. I don't want to sit down and be creative. I just haven't. When was the last time I did something for myself that was creative? Generators, when was the last thing that you did for you? Really, really? For you and not for somebody else? Seriously. Not because you feel you had to do it. It's not like I have to do this, I have to do that. When did you do something that was really creative for you, that where your gift is, and you just went and you colored in your mandala book, or you went down to your workshop and you made something, and you just completely were in your zone, right? That's so important. You have to do it. The strategy you have is to respond. But again, my invitation to you is, and this I learned after years of human design, is that can you first respond to yourself? First, start off with responding to yourself. The same as I said to manifester. Manifester, can you inform yourself first? Are you clear? Is there clarity there? So generator, where's the response? Can you respond to yourself? What do you need? What is your body telling you? Where's your you? Respond to you first. What is it that you need to eat? What is it that's important to you? You're self-sacrificing. All the time you're self-sacrificing, and it's blocking your chi, and you're struggling to be in the flow. You need to feel satisfaction. You've got so much to give. The most important thing about your energy is that you have this amazing ability to light up and make happen. So you're you're like a fairy, basically, a fairy godmother that can go around and just ping, 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 and you make a difference, right? So you have to be making a difference in terms of what your authority is saying. You got to listen to your gut, or you got to listen to your emotional wave. You got to look at your authorities, which we look at in the next round of this training next week. We look at authority and where your authority is and how to trust that. But if you are using your strategy is to respond. What now are you feeling? Is this in your truth? Is it not in your truth? Where's this feeling coming from? Is it coming from your sacral? Is it coming from your emotions? Just check in to see, because you want to respond with healthy boundaries. So yes, because you want to, no, you don't want to. And if that's the only thing you leave with today is being in that truth of yourself, then you've learned so much about that. And that's just, it's so important to play with that, feel into it. Your gift. I love generator energy. I always wish I was a generator. We always wish we were something else, right? So like projectors, like, I wish I was a generator so I could just use more energy, because I'm always like, I'm like wanting more energy, always want to do more. But for you guys, your secret, this is so beautiful, is that when you inhale, life around you exhales. And when you exhale, life around you inhales. That means you are living and breathing in a response environment, right? Just, if you take it into just breath. So you sit and you think, and you're like, this is what I really want. And you start to really manifest it, right? What happens? You're in a responding environment. You start to see that thing taking place, right? You start to see it comes to you and it gets offered to you, and you get to like respond to it. You get to say like, yes, this lights me up. No, it doesn't. You don't have to wait and hope that it comes. Like, it's about being in the movement, like if you're thinking about going on a holiday somewhere, you're looking for the signs. Generators, you're all about the signs. You got to listen to the signs. You go into the shop, suddenly someone's wearing a t-shirt that's like says Koh Samui. And you're like, oh my word, I was thinking about Thailand yesterday. That's so weird. Now the stranger has this top that says Koh Samui. And you're like, okay, that's just too weird. Like, I'm not even going to worry about that response. I'm just going to leave it over there. And then 3 days later, a friend says, it would be so cool if we did a retreat in Thailand. And you're like, what? This is like coming up. And this is like, this is the response, so you get to feel it. Now, because you thought about it and you intended and you were manifesting it in your life and it came about, if there's anything about it that's not right, you are allowed to say no. But we are never taught like how to correct that. So we go like, oh, I'm being ungrateful. I should just say yes, but oh, the accommodation's not right. And just this other stuff isn't right. And remember, the 20 becomes the 80%. So the 20% that's not right, whether it's a partner, a place, it becomes the 80%. You forget about how amazing it is, and you focus on that, and it becomes big for you. So when you're making big life decisions and you're buying a house, or you're doing something that's going to take a little bit more out of your pocket, your energy, your time, you've got to really look into it. And if you're saying no, you're not ungrateful. What you do is you go back and you say, okay, I know whoever out there was listening, because I'm inhaling, you're exhaling. And I said, I wanted to go to Thailand and this is what I wanted, and it's happening. There's just things about this that aren't right. Like, I'm not happy with this and this. Is it possible? I just want to know, like, can we fix this? Is there a way that this could possibly be changed? And put it out there. Because we never go back and we say those things, like, can we just amend this contract here quickly? If you play around with this, it's quite hilarious. Like, it actually really works, and it works for all our energy types. You're allowed to go back and amend and say, actually, I would like it to be a little bit more like this and this. So it's important to not be afraid to say no, even if it is right and you're not ungrateful, and you don't have to feel bad about that on any level whatsoever. The manifesting generator is always a topic of debate in here. Now, I think it always will be, and for fair reason, is because a manifesting generator is a generator, but they are like a hybrid generator. They're a variation of a generator. And that's because they still have the open enveloping aura. They still have the same not self, the same strategy, the same signature, except, there's you know, they've got the defined sacral, there's a motor to throat connection, and the 4 motor centers being the root, sacral, heart, and solar plexus. So they have that connection. But the thing is to them as well, that's a key for their energy, is that they do operate on a slightly more manifesting energy as well. They often have the gate of the multitasker, the busy one. There's the manifesting generator channel that makes them a bit more hybrid. You can often pick up in manifesting generators, there's a little bit of ADD or ADHD. There's this like kind of busyness and restlessness, and a manifesting generator, they will always, and it's so common, they will start things and then they will kind of like have 3 or 4 books they're reading, and then they'll only like finish one of them, or they won't finish any, or they'll start a course and then they'll drop out of the course halfway through, or they'll, you know, that it's kind of that. I always say to manifesting generators, you know, here is life, here's a plate of life, and you're going to the buffet of life, and you just get to choose the pieces that work for you, right? And you get to try different things, and you get to sit down and you try those things, and you see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And then you get to leave those things and carry on. And you don't have to get stuck in it. You don't have to get like, feel that you need to, because you started it, you have to finish it. Now, obviously there's always a balance. So we always find the middle road here. So we say like, you know, be true to yourself. What are you feeling about this? What are you getting? What is your intuition saying about it? Like, you know, if it's really not for you, then don't carry on with it. That's perfect. Don't beat yourself up, because you have a different path. And one of the best advices for manifesting generator is also use a bit of the manifestor information that was provided. You got to just inform. Inform is really important. A lot of manifesting generators, one of common thing is that they'll head out and they'll be driving and they'll be going off on this mission, and then halfway through they'll be like, oh, let's just go here, let's do this, like, you know, so they change the course of the direction and they're going in different places, and you can often feel like they're all over the place, and you're just like, whoa, like this is like crazy. And that's because they haven't informed you, or you don't know that their energy is a manifesting generator energy. So you think your friend is just like super scattered, kind of just everything's happening all over. And then when you find out your friend's a manifesting generator, or your partner, you're like, oh man, that makes so much sense. Like, okay, cool, do your thing. I'm not going to get stressed out by you. It's not worth, you know, like you can totally just go with the flow and not feel like what is going on. This person is like all over the place. So manifesting generators, they do struggle to identify purely as generators, which is why I think through the human design experiment, they have really branched off on their own, and they are becoming a separate entity through their own experimentation. So the frustration aspect still counts for them. Remember, energetic block when you're not feeling creative, all that still counts. The signature, feeling satisfied, it still counts. It's important for you to respond accordingly, but add a sprinkle, like a teaspoon of manifesting info I just gave, and stir it into that pot, and you'll have a very interesting experience. Your energy will shift a lot, and how you bringing forward and making happen for yourself. For generators and manifesting generators, for other energy types too, it's good that we ask generators very good yes or no questions. I mean, as a generator energy, I'm sure anyone who's listening to this can relate to the fact that it is very satisfying when someone asks you a very good yes or no question that you get to respond to, that you can really access, and you can say like yes or no. No, don't make it vague. Be direct with this energy. Ask them good questions that they can deal with and they can respond to, because that's their energy, is to respond, and they will respond. So they are also about responding. Responding is also in conversation. There's a responding energy to that. The projector has a very focused and absorbing aura, and a projector's energy can feel as though the projector really hones and zones in. And the projector energy, because it's an energy that needs to be invited. It can be an energy where if it is not invited, if the projector is to give their input or their 2 cents worth or say something, either the generator energies or the other energies can go, what? Like, whew, that was like a little bit too close to home, a little bit too uncomfortable for me. I didn't invite that in right now, so it's quite a thing, because projector, it's a very strange, I would say it's a strange energy, because I am a projector, so I understand this energy. We don't have a defined sacral, so there is no consistent energy for generating and manifesting like the other energies that we just looked at do. We don't have access to that sacral energy to keep us going. So we want to keep going, we have the ability to keep going, but we don't have the capacity. And so for a projector to kind of take on like running an ultra marathon or doing a lot of physicality, pushing themselves, they're going to break. Most projectors who have been in corporate, they're out of corporate by their sort of mid to early 40s. They're burnout, breakdown, adrenal fatigue. It's a struggle for projectors. We live in a world that is a generator. It's an energy world, right? So you got your manifestors and your generators and your manifesting generators, and they're just like this hubbub, this beehive. And then the projectors come along and they're just a totally different energy, like reflectors. They actually fall into the reflector side. And suddenly there's not like a world that they can operate in. And it's like, oh, now what? Okay, now I need to keep up. And in that process, they can really break themselves, actually. So, there's the aspect of what does it mean for a projector to be invited? So for all of you who are not projectors that are watching, remembering that you do need to invite the projector. You need to see the projector, and there's an invitation for the projector to share. So, it's like seeing the potential of the projector. The energy is a guide energy, and generator and projector have a very beautiful relationship, because when the generator's down and the generator's not sure of their direction, or they need some guidance, or they want to reflect and they want to look deeper into themselves, they come to the projector. The projector provides them with that, because the projector can absorb, can look into it, they can see, and they work and they help the generator. And then the generator is like, oh, it's amazing. And then the generator sees the projector, and the projector is then lit up. So it's kind of like, if you think about a projector, like a physical projector, it's like, can the projector, it's reflecting onto the wall, right? And you're seeing that, but the projector doesn't see itself. And so it's like, unless you're looking at the wall, you're also not seeing the projection of the image. So it's one of those that have to actually be seen and then acknowledged, like, oh, you there, come forward, can you help me with this? I need to access that. For a projector to just walk around giving people advice or being super bossy in their family, or it just never works out very well for them. And they often land up being overlooked to largely like in businesses and in corporates. But the thing is, when a projector is seen, that's next level. It's literally 0 to 0. That's the energy. It's like you're either seen and like people see you and they're like, wow, that person's amazing, or they don't see you at all. It's never a mixture of that. Nelson Mandela, projector. The Queen, projector. Diana, projector. Obama, projector. I mean, if you think about the level to which people loved Princess Diana, loved her and worshipped her, and she could literally just do no wrong, right? And that's your projector energy, like seen and exalted. It's like, she went from not being anyone really to being completely like another projector, Russell Brand. It's very interesting. You start to look at the projectors who are kind of moving up in society, the ones who are having that guide energy, because Ra said that the future is the projectors stepping into the leadership roles, where that's where their energy is best utilized. So, you know, if we see the categories of projectors also have 3 categories. So they get a little bit complicated, because you have a mental projector, an energy projector, and a classic projector. Now, you would need to have a look at one's chart to see, like, oh, am I a mental projector? Do I have a defined head, an ajna, and a throat, and then no other definition? Am I an energy projector? I'm an energy projector because I've got my throat defined, I've got my my heart defined, and I've got my I've got my throat and my heart defined. So I'm an energy projector. And then also a classic projector, which is basically like definition lies below the throat. So it's like everything at the top is open and then defined below. So, and there's in the classic, the definition lies below it. So it never includes a defined motor. So it will always be like, for instance, throat to spleen will be a classic projector, and those charts will be very open in that space. Projectors, firstly, you have to invite yourself to life. Like, you know, that's what I learned. So it's like, hey, I'm invited to life. Like, that's the first thing. So, you know, and do what you love. That's the other thing. I always say we all should be doing what we love, but Ra was very specific about this. He said, you have to do what you love. It's so important, because when a projector is doing what they love, they're shining, they're like sharing, they're in their flow, and they're just like these beacons, right? And that's exactly that energy, because when they are in flow, when you're in flow, projector, you attract others to you, because others are like, wow, I love that projector energy. It's like, so, wow, it's so happy, it's so bright, it's so exciting, it's so activating. I just love that. I love it. And that's how the other energies will experience it. And if you're a bitter projector, what is bitter? Bitter is always like, it repels. Like, people are not attracted to that bitterness, and that bitterness can make you sour, and that light energy is not there. So, you know, and how do you know if you're a bitter projector? Because if you're not shiny and you're not happy and you're not passionate about what you're doing, and you're like, I'm just not happy in my space, then you know you're in your not self. And it's like, okay, well, what makes you happy? Where's your shine? Let's lift you up. So parents with projector kids, find out what your kids love, let them do it, encourage them to study whatever it is they want to study, whatever lights them up, what makes them super happy, and let them take that out there to the market, because they will attract. When other energy types see them, it's like, poof. And there's a key takeaway for the future of projectors. They are very good leaders. They are very good analysts. They are very good system analysts. That's why they're very good at human design, because they see human design as the system of analysis, and their brains work like that. So if you've got a projector kid, put them through, you know, let them go and study, but let them do some leadership courses, and let them understand how, you know, how to be a good leader, how to hold a position of power, what do they enjoy analyzing. Reflector is tough, because there's like 1.5% of the data gathered gives us a reflector. All 9 centers are white. Then there are gate activations. They are the same as a projector, because they don't have constant energy to generate and manifest the same as your others. And you know that energy is not constantly available to them, but they're a different creature altogether. A reflector is totally like completely different. So your other types, your manifestor, generator, obviously manifesting generators include, I'm just going to say generator, projector. They sun energy. They work on, like, you could say they are solar. Ra would say they're solar aspects of them. And the reflector is the moon. And so the reflector works on a lunar cycle. They're accessing moon energy. A reflector simply reflects back to you who you are. That's the craziest thing about a reflector. They had different examples when you start looking online and reading up about reflectors, where they had this workshop where a reflector came in and would stand in front of a person, and that person would just literally, that reflector would start crying, and they literally could just see into that person, like, and feel that person's energy. Imagine being so open. Think about the places you're open in your charts. Imagine having that much openness, and also like sampling it, feeling it all the time. And so you are merely living in as a reflection of what everybody else is looking at. It's looking at a mirror. If you look at someone and you think they're a reflector, then you haven't seen them at all. Because when you look at somebody and you actually only just see yourself, you're probably looking at a reflector. Because they're a mirror to you. You will feel like they are a twin, a soul, like everything about them is the same. They literally just reflect you. So if you ever want to, and that's what's so powerful about them, if you want to know how you are seen, how you are doing, how, how you are perceived, you merely look at them and they look at you, and you will see yourself, basically. Everything you like about yourself, everything you don't like about yourself. So they're very powerful. And see also why they're smaller in number. They need to be really cared for, and not like they have to be wrapped up. But if you have a reflector child, like learn as much as you can about reflectors. Do like extra research, take courses on them. If you are a reflector, go to Jovian, put yourself into a human design course, understand how your energy works, because your energy is different and you can't work on anything that we have discussed in this course. You're a completely different person. And so you've got to learn to work with that. But I know I met this one lady who said that she knew a reflector and she came across her. It was just random. They were at a workshop and she was talking human design. And this woman said, no, she's a reflector. And she checked her chart and she was. And she said that she was such a dynamic individual. She was so strong. She was so like incredible. But the woman who told me the story is an incredibly strong woman who I admire. So I was like, oh, it's like a real like mind twist, right? Because she was seeing this woman and she was talking about all this woman's great points. And weirdly enough, I was seeing her, but not consciously talking about herself. It was like the weirdest thing I'd ever experienced. So it is an incredible energy. And for a reflector, it's like, will I be seen? Will I be acknowledged? Will I be appreciated? What will today bring? Like, where's the surprise in it? Like, what am I going to uncover? Like, where am I? What is it that I'm doing? Where am I going? And they can be anyone that they really want to be. And it's so important they surround themselves in a good space with good people, in a good community, because not only are they affected by people within their immediate environment, but they're also open to the collective. So they literally are reflecting how the collective are evolving, how we're progressing. And there are incredibly important energy types. And so reflectors, they live by a different set of rules, and they can sense who is living authentically. By just looking at you, they can tell you things about yourself. And they can tell you if you're in your truth or you're not. And that's kind of how that whole cycle that works between us. And that's why in the beginning, when we looked at that graph and we said, well, how do they work together? Remember in that circle, I'll just go back to that. It showed us that, I'll find it quick. It showed us that reflectors would tell us how well we're doing. They'll reflect back to us. So now when we look at this and we're seeing the whole of it, what we're seeing is like that each of these energy types, each of us fall into a space where our energy in its exalted form is best utilized. And that's where we're the strongest. But we also have to be completely in line to like living with our truth. And is that what we want? Is this where we want to be? And how are we going to change that? Because this is your experiment. I'm merely just providing you with the information. You get to experiment with it. and you get to play with it, and you don't have to believe in anything other than yourself. That's the crazy thing. I'm not asking you to believe in anything, really. I'm just asking you to believe in you, to access your energy, to honor your energy, to understand it, to take some of what we've discussed into account and feel it. Yeah, and play around with it and question it and look it up and experiment. And next week we'll look at authority, we'll look at profiles, we'll look at definition, because that's important. You know, like, where's your guiding system? Where's your authority? What does that mean exactly? And how are you defined? Like, are you a single definition? Are you splits? Are you triple splits? You know, those are aspects of how we take in information, how we sample life. And then our profiles tell us a bit about, like, the costumes that we wear and how those costumes look. You know, if we've got a 2 in our profile, we're more recluse, more like of a hermit aspect. If we've got a 4, we really rely on people we know and community. If we've got a 3 in our profile, we have to learn for ourselves. You guys just, you cannot be told what. It's like me telling you that, like, this doesn't work or that doesn't work. It's like, it's nonsense. You guys have to figure it out. So you got to go off. You got to let the 3 figure it out. And it's interesting because the 3 goes and figures it out, right? So, and then they come back and then they tell people about it, right? And then the 4 learns from it and goes, ooh, that's interesting. And so I'm like, oh, I learned from that, you know, don't think I'm going to go out and venture that far. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take it, I'm going to integrate it. And so these numbers have a conversation amongst each other. And if that's all you ever within the space, these 2 sessions and that's for next week, I'm including with all this information, if that's all you ever learn about human design, it's all you ever need to know, basically. That's the crazy thing. Like, if you know that and you can understand it and you can look at that, you can literally deal with clients who come to you, you can understand your family, and there's so much more acceptance in it. And so that's my my workshop, well, part 1, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And if anyone would like to say anything, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourselves. I'm going to allow you to start your videos. It says allow. It sounds very instructive. I'm just going to change a setting. It's like, oh, you guys can do whatever you want. Thanks, Sam. Thank you for the message. And thanks, Melissa. Thank you. Yeah, it takes a while to integrate, and you gotta ask questions, you gotta turn it around. Thanks, Lizzie. And then eventually it just it gets integrated. And I can tell you that it's the most interesting thing, because it is a thing. It's the most interesting tool to play with. It's so fascinating. It makes so much sense. And you know, you can even start to tell what energy types people are through the conversations that they have, and what centers are open and what centers aren't. And yeah, it's very incredible to play around with. Yeah, exactly. Sam said she needs to get the recording so she can also listen to it again. Exactly. It takes a while. And you guys will get the slides too. Yes, absolutely. And you can go through that, and I'll send that through this afternoon. It's a very quiet group here. So the future people watching this will just be like, it's a quiet collective, but that's fine. Well, as long as that's all that matters, as long as it was explained clearly and it makes sense and it helps you. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I want to thank you for your time. And, you know, you can always get hold of me, and the links will also be in the slide for Jovian if you would like to look at their website and have a look at the different offerings that they've got and the stats that they keep. I like to check in on the stats every now and then to see if there's any shifts in numbers, etc. So have a lovely day, and thanks.